Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast.
Welcome to episode 262. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my partner in endeavor, Ken Poland. And Ken, this week we have the trans shooter, Trump heading to the clink, the stalking law update, the ATF descends on a local gun shop, the new currency push, and Sine Die. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm on the right side of the grass.
Well, speaking of grass, not the kind people smoke, but as soon as the grass starts growing every year, I get the worst allergies. So so I'm starting to feel it down here in part of Georgia I live in. Allergies are starting to get to me a little.
Well, I prescribe 2 weeks in Florida.
That'll help.
Yeah,
I might need to try that.
Yeah, go get in the salt air. Trust me, I'm a doctor.
Well, I'm still waiting for my fishing invite, so we'll have to try that out one day.
Yeah, me too, and I own the damn boat. I was talking to somebody about that yesterday. He's a contractor like I am. He's actually on the engineering side, and we were kind of commiserating because he likes taking his camper out. Like, man, when I have the money, I don't have the time, and vice versa. We
bought a camper a couple of years ago, and I think whenever we take it out now, it actually costs more than staying in a hotel room. We've used it so infrequently because I had to buy a camper and a truck to pull it with.
I did have a customer down here, and this was really smart. They have a couple kids. She was going back to school to get her master's for education. So it's not that they certainly weren't poor. It's just the being very money wise. So they would take their camper down to Disney. I guess it's called Fort Wilderness. And once you're in the park, you have access to all the pools that are within Disney.
Yep.
So they would stay in the camper, and the kids didn't care. And then, they'd get a day in the park, because obviously these park tickets are outrageous. But the rest of the time, they would hit the pools and stuff. I thought that was a really good way of giving your kids the vacation experience without spending, the last number I heard for somebody was like $15,000.
Yeah, Disney, there was a report a couple of weeks ago released that said Disney was the most expensive vacation you can take nowadays as a family. Now, I would challenge that because I just bought tickets to Scotland for this summer. And after my wife, after 4 or 5 plane tickets and Airbnbs for a couple of weeks, I think we put Disney to shame.
Yeah, did you buy Premium Select on Delta?
No, we've already talked about this. We ride in, not all the way in the back, but we're not up front in the premium lay down flat seats.
Well, those are sometimes like $17,000.
Yeah, it was
for a round trip. But the premium select, I haven't been on one yet. I've got mine booked, but I figured with all the travel you do, you'd have regional upgrades and all that stuff.
Yeah, I get upgrades every so often, but probably not flying across the pond. Hopefully, we're keeping our fingers crossed.
And it's really tough out of ATL because you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a diamond or million miler at ATL.
Oh, I know. Yep.
I mean, right. I'm gonna chat thing with other Sky Miles members, and someone said they announced 4 million milers on the flight and 1 3 million miler on the flight. It's like that's why you're not getting upgraded out of Atlanta.
I've got 400,000 lifetime miles, and it feels like I fly all the time. I can't imagine getting 1 million miles. That's just, I think that's a lot of people crossing the pond. It is.
My wife had a client who was on some sort of cultural board in Spain. So he flew back and forth from Atlanta to Madrid a dozen times a year.
Yeah, I don't mind flying over. I don't mind coming back. Flying over is rough on me. Jet lag really gets you when you go across the pond.
There's a picture of an old couple in Venice sleeping in the on the gondola. And it says, take your vacations while you're still young. And I thought, having been to Europe a few times, what a great idea. You find a cheap activity, allows you to, because you usually land in the morning, you can't check in the afternoon. Right. Go drop your bags at the hotel, and go get in a gondola ride and sleep for 3 hours.
That's a good plan. But we did take a gondola ride last summer, and I think it was $75 for half an hour.
Oh, was
so
it?
I'm not sure how cheap that adventure is, but yeah, I get your point.
Oh, when we landed in Madrid, they finally took pity on us. We're sitting in the lobby sleeping with our with the bags around me, and I'm kind of psycho about that, so I've got a bag touching a part of my body, so I'm sprawled out with like the handles and stuff looped around me, so someone just can't steal it. And they finally look over there like, this is not a good look. You got some fat guy snoring and like, okay, your room's ready, senor.
Now the question is, do you allow your wife to check a bag when you all travel? Are you one of these guys that nobody can check a bag?
No, no. My wife treats me like a Sherpa. No, man. We'll end up checking 4 bags, 2 carry-ons, and of course the personal item.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm a bag checker now. I like my strategy on flying now is to get on last. So I wait until every person has boarded the plane. They're about to close the doors, and they go, Mr. Pullen, if you don't board now, you're getting left, and I just hop on. So you walk straight to your seat, sit down, and you're gone. But you have to check a bag for that strategy to actually work. Yeah,
and I grew up that way. I grew up as a Delta brat, so that we didn't carry bags through the airports. You may miss 2 or 3 flights. So
my dad was a Delta retiree.
Yeah, so you still have pass privileges then.
We do, but we never use them. It's too tough to
fly.
Yeah,
me neither. I have them. They're too much of a pain. And
we used to fly when people smoked on the airplanes. If you remember that, it was ashtrays, and Dad would light up a cigarette on the airplane.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I remember when they moved it to the back of the plane. We were on a flight to Hawaii, LAX to Honolulu, and because there was a bunch of us, they stuck us all together. Well, they stuck us in the back of the plane, and people were coming back from first class and sitting on the armrest, on my armrest, and I was a kid. You're talking 10-year-old kid, come back there and sit on the armrest and light up a cigarette.
Nice.
That's what you call poor man's first class. Is when everybody gets their own row and they can lift the armrests up and stretch out. Of course, at 6'1", I can't stretch out anywhere on an airplane. So Braves did win their opener.
Yeah, yesterday was
as we record, it was yesterday, but it was Thursday.
Yeah, so there'll be 3 or 4 games in the books by the time this drops. But the Braves did win the opening day game, so you can't win them all unless you win the first one. So it's looking good so far.
Sloppy. And I had to listen to it on the radio because I was working. But it sounded sloppy, and we lost Fried for probably the next start at least.
Yeah, I saw that. How was the speed of the game? I know Major League put a lot of new rules in to speed the game up. Do you know how long
I'm
it took
yesterday? I'm going to have to watch one.
Okay.
Because again, I was especially when I'm going from call to call, and my phone's ringing. Every time my phone rings, the radio shuts off. So I'll have to actually watch one to come up with an opinion. But this not being a sports show, we have the Covenant Christian School shooting. This happened last Monday, I think.
Yes, very sad. Covenant Christian School up in Nashville. Audrey Hale came into that school and gunned down, I don't know any other way to say it, 3 students and 3 administrators were killed when she came in the school. She broke through a door to do that. So
and I heard that one of the students died pulling a fire alarm.
Yeah, and I've got one of my good friends I used to work with lives in Nashville, and I knew she had young children up there, so I instantly called her and asked her if she was okay. And they were in a school a couple of miles down the street, but I think it's really, it's affected everybody this week. And if you lived in Nashville with young children, I can't imagine what you're going through this week.
Oh yeah, and look, and Hale got herself popped in 15 minutes.
Which it was really hard for me to watch the video of the police officers going into that school. But there were 2 guys. One of the officers was a Marine Corps veteran. His name was Michael Calazzo. I hope I pronounced that right. And there was another 27-year-old police officer named Rex Engelbert. To watch those guys go down the hallway with the precision they did, you could hear the shooter firing shots in the background, and they literally went into a room, and it's just you can't describe it. But the first guy, 3 times, he shot her 3 times, I think, and then the second guy came through with a pistol and finished the job. It was unbelievable, the courage those guys showed going down the hallway and finding her and putting her out of her misery. Let's just say that. I'm glad they did what they did. And if the guys in Uvalde, the police department, would have showed the same level of courage out in Texas a couple months ago, we wouldn't have lost near as many young children.
Yeah. There was also Broward County Sheriff's Department before that.
Yep. It's brought up. It's brought up a couple. I've been talking to a lot of people this week about it. The instant reaction from my friends was, well, what can we do about this? And I'm always scared when people get into situations like this and we start asking the government to solve problems. It feels like a lot of people are looking to the government to solve this problem of mass shootings. I don't think that's the right way to look at this, Dave. And then, the gun confiscation crowd, without even mourning the children that were killed, or just instantly went to confiscation and let's get assault weapons out of people's hands, even though they can't define what an assault weapon is.
Yeah, and your boy Massey got into it.
He did. Thomas Massey, who one of our friends, Matt Gertler, is representative in Georgia. Used to be representative in Georgia. It's his chief of staff.
And Matt had been on the show before.
Yeah, Matt's been on the show. He's chief of staff for Thomas Massey, and he really got into a heated argument outside of Congress a couple of days after this with a Democrat that was basically went down the confiscation route, and we've got to take all firearms away. And look, I don't know a problem that the government has solved in my lifetime. They're sure not going to solve this problem. And I get real nervous when people start saying, Mr. Government, please come in and either solve these problems, or Mr. Government, the mental health discussion is something that's very much needed to occur, because this girl obviously had mental health conditions. But we can, the government's not going to solve any of these problems. We have to figure out as a society how to address mental health. And right now it's not being addressed at all, I don't think.
Yeah, and we've not seen the manifesto, if there is one. I'm of two minds on this. As somebody who dabbles in the media, like we do, which very, very little bit, is dip the small toe in with a talk show on a podcast every week, but the information should be freely available. But I also don't want to glorify these things. You want to find a way to not give oxygen to those ideas, because the next nut finds that's the way to get my message out. Right. It's a delicate dance, and it's something that the press used to do. They used to show discretion, good, better, and different. But most people never knew that FDR was in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. Most people didn't know about JFK's bad back. There were days he couldn't move. Injuries he sustained on a PT boat 109. So they used to show discretion, and they don't anymore. I hope. My curiosity makes me want to read it, but the adult in me says that we shouldn't give oxygen to that sort of stuff.
Yep. No, I agree with you on that. And a lot of people are calling, one of the things that school did not have is security. They didn't have armed police officers at school, which I think I heard that this girl actually cased out this school because they were soft on security. And a lot of people are calling for more school funding. And if you look at it, we've got, I just pulled the stat up, 115,000 schools in the United States. If we gave every school $200,000 for security, that would only be $23 billion a year. I know that number sounds big, but we've given Ukraine so far over $100 billion. So I think you can really look at where the government spends their money to see what their priorities are. So for $23 billion, every single school in the U.S. could have had $200,000 to provide more enhanced security measures. But instead, our priorities are let's give $100 billion to a country across the pond. So I think we got to look at priorities in regards to
it's also a parental choice in this case because this school is a private school. It's a Christian school, Presbyterian. So you hate to say that the kids would have been safer at public school, but there may have been a resource officer. But I don't know that a resource officer could move any faster than 15 minutes because those two police officers were fast.
You're right. And crime is, if I've always said if people want to do a crime bad enough, something like this, they're going to find a way to do it, even if there are, like you said, school resource officers in a building. But I think it deters, and I think that's what we need to do is deter someone like this girl from coming in, doing an act like this to a school that's left really undefended.
Yeah, I'd love to see a school secretary or whoever sits at the front see someone come in with a gun and pull out hers and pop him right there as he walks through the door and go, not today, not my kids. The arming of school teachers, I absolutely support. If they want it, it's not a mandatory program.
Right.
It's if they go through the training. People don't know pilots carry guns. Not all of them, but it's an FAA program through Homeland Security, and they have to qualify every year. And I know a few pilots, and I know a couple that do carry.
They probably need to with all the crazies on the airplanes nowadays. I hardly fly without somebody causing a scene on an airplane. I don't know what's...
Get off of Southwest.
Yeah, if you fly Spirit and what's the other low-cost airline?
JetBlue.
JetBlue, any of those, you see a lot more issues than Delta.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, we need to definitely keep an eye on this school shooting, see what comes out of this. Very, very sad situation.
A divided federal government is about the best thing we can hope for as gun owners. If you swap that and you put Republican, we've already seen what Donald Trump does with that stuff. He overreacts, just like he did with the slide fire stock out of Vegas. Speaking of Donald J. Trump, he has been indicted. I think the number you have on here is 34.
It sounds like indicted on 34 charges.
Yeah. And even that shouldn't be released. It's a sealed indictment until he's formally charged, which is going to happen Tuesday, tomorrow as the show drops.
And I will be in New York City with the family. So we fly back Tuesday night, but it will be interesting to see what New York is like Monday and Tuesday leading up to President Trump turning himself in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what kind of zoo is it going to be?
I don't know if I'm going to Lower Manhattan on Tuesday morning, but I'm just very interested to see what the environment and see if there's any protest in the city over the weekend.
Well, he is not going to be handcuffed. From what I've seen, the Secret Service is having a meeting, or had a meeting, as the show drops on last Friday, but we're not getting any news out of it as we record. But the Secret Service, the NYPD, the court officers, and the DA's office are all coordinating how to do this safely.
So will we get a mugshot out of this arrest? I assume yes.
He, from what I read, it does not sound like he's going to the jail. Okay. He's not getting an orange jumpsuit as much as everybody wants it.
So he'll have on his blue suit and red tie in the mugshot?
I reckon.
I wonder if they'll put a white cloth over the top of him. I'm sure they don't want him in a mugshot dressed like a presidential, like he does as president most of the time.
Right. Well, it sounds like the investigators in the DA's office will handle the arrest, the fingerprinting photo, and then release him. And then I guess he'll get an update on what the 34 charges are.
Wow.
Who could think hooking up with one skank could cause all this much problem? I mean, unless you marry her. That's a totally different problem. It costs you way more than $138,000 he supposedly paid.
Well, I mean, is it going to cost him, or is this propelled him to the Republican nomination for president in 2024? I think this just closed the deal, right? Can anybody beat Trump now for the Republican nomination?
There's a couple theories on that. One is they're bleeding him. They're bleeding him dry. He's got 34 counts in New York. We expect any day for Fani Willis to drop an indictment here in Fulton County. And what this will do is, do I think you're going to see Trump in an orange jumpsuit being led off to prison? Highly doubt it. But it could drain his resources.
It could. It'd be a big distraction. And that was a question that I actually had to look up before the show is, could you serve as president or go through running for president if you were convicted of a crime? And the only qualifications, I had to look back at the Constitution on this, the only qualifications for presidents, you've got to be 35, a U.S. resident for 14 years, a natural-born citizen. So the Supreme Court intentionally said you cannot impose any additional qualifications on a person running for office. So Trump could win president, could be indicted, convicted of a crime, and actually could be sitting in jail and be president of the United States. I don't know what that means for our system today, but it could happen.
All I could think of is El Chapo sitting in his cell, just surrounded by, all this luxury, but it is technically a door.
Yeah, and we wondered, does Secret Service go to jail also with Trump? Or does he have an ankle monitor on in the White House? All very good questions as 2024 approaches.
If he does not win, I think his Secret Service protection is at the discretion of the sitting president. It's guaranteed for so many years after you leave office. I don't know if it's 1 or 2 years. It has been the tradition to allow a Secret Service detail to be with former presidents until they die. It's obviously not the same detail they had when they were in office.
And it sounds like President Biden has been completely silent on this so far. I haven't heard a peep out of him. He's probably having his ice cream in the basement of the White House, but I know it's a cheap shot. But he hasn't said anything about this, so it's going to be interesting to see what tone he takes.
Well,
or if he just takes a complete standoff. He was asked. Okay. What did he say?
As he was walking to the helicopter, I think it was Peter Doocy asked him, he goes, I have nothing to say about Trump, and just walked towards Marine One. So that is probably the last thing somebody said to him before he was allowed outside where the reporters were, is say nothing about Trump.
Yes, I do. I mean, to go back to the 2024 race, I think this cements his place as a Republican nominee. Even though I'm a big Ron DeSantis fan, I'm not sure DeSantis can win now with this happening. I'm not sure he could have before either, but I think this just cements his place as the Republican nominee.
Yeah, I mean, look, had Trump done what I want him to do, which is leave office, go build your library, go be retired, enjoy all the perks. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Trump's 78 now, so we talked about this. When he runs for office again, he's 76 now. He'll be 78 in 2024, and Biden actually will be 82 in 2024. So we're going to have 160 years worth of two old guys running for office.
Right. And both of them trying to prove who's more spry. Biden's in better shape physically, but Trump actually knows where he is when he wakes up in the morning. Yep. I have a feeling someone goes into the Biden bedroom and goes, Mr. President, he goes, where? So it's interesting times in which we live. It really is. And it is ugly out there.
Yeah, you just got to wonder how the rest of the world's viewing the United States when
the rest of the world's
events
on fire.
Like this are occurring. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but it's what a mess. I mean, what a mess.
All right, so one of the things that we did get out of this last session, we're obviously past Sine Die. House Bill 302, sponsored by Layman Franklin. So what this fixed was the law made a differentiation between a stalker or an abuser who cohabitated or had a child with somebody and someone who never cohabitated. So what these, and overwhelmingly women, but what these victims had to do was they could get a TPO fairly easily.
Right.
But when the stalking charge went up, especially if it was not aggravated stalking, the judges would give a TPO for the length of the sentence, including the probationary period, which is 2 years. But this victim would have to go through hiring a lawyer and jump through hoops through the civil process to get a permanent a PTO, I guess, or PPO, permanent protective order. TPS reports is the only thing that comes to mind on that from Office Space. So it put an additional burden on someone who's already victimized.
It definitely
and had put and put them in a position where they have to negotiate with the abuser. You know, like things are going to go a lot easier if you go ahead and sign this. I mean, but it's a negotiation with the attorney of the abuser.
Yeah. So I was going to say one of our friends, Jessica, who used to be on the show and a good friend of Dave and I both, Jessica Salagi, she talked to Representative Franklin about this and said that what the law really needed to do is, after the conviction, if the person so chooses, then that actual order can be a permanent protective order. So not just 2 years at most, like you said, Dave, but we can now have a permanent, basically restraining order against the person. So very good change. This bill was 18 lines. I think the meat of the bill was about 4 lines, and it passed unanimously in the Georgia House. So kudos for a citizen like Jessica reaching out to the representative, understanding there's a need for a change in the law and actually getting that accomplished. I mean, this is a really, really great thing on her behalf, and it just shows that you can make a change if you lobby your representative for it.
Yeah, get involved. Have them know who you are.
Yeah, get involved. Yeah, they should know who you are if you call them and ask them for this. So
yeah, I mean, so many people complain about stuff, and you ask them, "Who's your state rep?" You go, "Oh."
So I applaud Jessica for doing this. And each state rep in Georgia represents about 55,000 people. And so it sounds like a lot, but you can get to know your state rep. You know where they have, one of our friends, Martin. Probably everybody in his area knows where the guy eats breakfast in the morning. So you can always go sit down with them, talk to them, show them the law, and see if you can get it changed. So kudos to Jessica on this. This is very much needed and will help out a lot of women in the state of Georgia.
And to the credit of everybody up there is 18 lines, one piece of paper.
Oh, I know, one piece of paper, which is amazing. And that's how most bills should be. Most bills should be one-pagers, not 200 pagers like some of them become.
I should be able to sit down and read what you, especially if you're changing a law. I understand if you're creating an entire new code section, that's something different. When you're updating a law, I should be able to sit down and read it in 5 minutes, go, oh, okay.
Easily understand it. Yeah. That's
what happens so often is these bills are so long, people don't read, they read the summary. And the summary, of course,
and they
makes
read that. Yeah. In Georgia, you read the summary, and you read the whip report. That's what they call it, that the leadership and both the Republican and Democrats give you. And the whip report basically says, this is why this bill is great and you need to vote on it, or this is why this bill stinks and you need to vote against it. And the representatives don't read the bills. They just read the whip report. And that's how most people vote. So I love this because it's actually one page and you can read it and understand what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually does something to protect victims.
I hope I didn't get anybody in trouble by talking about the whip reports. I know I'm a little too direct sometimes on the show, but that is what happens to a lot of legislation.
It's impossible to read.
It is. It's impossible to keep up with every bill that's going on. So
and the bill that I read in January that I think is really good is a totally different bill by the time we get to crossover day.
It is. Yeah, that can definitely happen.
And that's happening daily as committees are and each member has his own committees to go to.
Yes, and the keywords in these bills, we always laughed about it, but it was like shall or may. You can replace a may with a shall or a shall with a may and completely change the meaning of a bill or a law that gets passed.
Oh, absolutely. Just like concealed weapons permits used to be, which was a may issue, which gave judges discretion to a shall, unless you have a valid reason not to give this weapons license.
Yeah, those are two of the most important words in the legal and all the bills that get passed and in our law in the state of Georgia, and probably at the state at the federal level also, but shall and may.
Well, we have, speaking of guns, 16 ATF agents descend on Adventure Outdoors in Smyrna.
Yes, if you know Adventure Outdoors, big, huge gun store in Smyrna. I've been there multiple times. It's where almost every statewide politician has an event. Ron DeSantis actually had an event 2 days after this occurs. So it's not a local gun store that you would never know that's there. This is big gun stores. So like you said, 16 agents from all over the country. Let's just say they raided a gun store. They wanted to understand and look at every single gun, every single serial number, and match all the stuff up with what they said. It's kind of weird timing to me, Dave.
It is very odd timing. And look, the history on Adventure Outdoors is rather interesting when it comes to legal stuff. Bloomberg came after them. Before they built the big, they had a smaller store. I think the Wallaces still own that property. But they had a smaller store, and now they're in what used to be a Winn-Dixie or something. It used to be a grocery store. So big gun store. Bloomberg went after him, suing him because some guns that were bought at Adventure Outdoors were found in New York. Adventure Outdoors had no control over that. It's called a straw purchase.
Right.
They had no idea the paperwork was correct. But since then, if you've bought a gun at Adventure Outdoors, they are meticulous with their paperwork.
Look,
even to the point where
I've never bought a gun where the people weren't meticulous with the paperwork. I don't know about you, but I've never been to a gun store and purchased a gun where they didn't do a background check, asked me for my concealed carry permit to see if I had one, or didn't run it through the background check system. I've never.
Well, they don't run it through NICS if you have a concealed weapons permit.
Right.
No, but the way Adventure Outdoors does it is you do the paperwork. The guy selling you the gun checks it. And any other store, that's it. Then a supervisor comes over. He checks it. Then you're escorted to the front at the checkout, it's just like a grocery store. And the cashier looks at the paperwork. And then they have a manager come over, look at the paperwork before you walk out the door.
Jeez. A lot of good checks.
Well, it's CYA.
That's what they want to do to stay in business and operate like the government tells them to.
And the Wallaces are good folks. Eric is quoted in this. That's Jay was the founder, or is the founder, and Jay's still involved, from what I understand. Eric is I think the oldest son, and I know Jason, who kind of runs in my group of friends. He runs they own a couple pawn shops too. He runs the pawn shops, and Eric is runs the Adventure Outdoors itself. But they're good family folks. They had no plan on shipping guns to New York. They obviously believe in the political process, and they obviously believe in the Second Amendment. So they host game dinners to raise money for candidates. They get out in front, and honestly, on the back end, it's pretty good advertisement.
It is. It definitely is.
But we had 4 members of Congress show up, which is curious how they knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they showed up at the same time, but yeah, Loudermilk, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rich McCormick, and Mike Collins all showed up and spoke with the ATF agents on the scene. So it was interesting how they all showed up together. Maybe they, I don't know. It's a good question.
Now, there could have been a phone call made to Adventure Outdoors and tell them, "Hey, listen, we're going to be there tomorrow, or we're going to be there Tuesday, whatever. We need you to go ahead and have all your paperwork ready for us." But it's fairly unprecedented to have 16 agents from all over the country descend on one shop. And I know it's a big gun store, but that's a statement they're making.
Yes, it is. They said they'd never had that many agents show up at once before. I think it's typically 4 to 8 that come in if they ever done these kind of checks, but 16 is a big group.
Yeah, I mean, most small shops have one ATF agent, and they know that agent. They work with them. And the ATF traditionally has not been the enemy of a gun store. They're there to help you stay in compliance is their idea. So they find stuff on paperwork that's messed up. They'll they'll show you if it's obviously not egregious or it's not a problem with your process that one thing was missed, whatever. They're not there to shut you down. But when you bring a squad size element down, I mean, that's the only reason you bring 16 is you're hoping to get enough people confused, enough people separated from each other so that you can get some mistakes.
So if Dave is in charge tomorrow, does the ATF remain a federal agency or
not?
No. Great answer. I was hoping you would say that. Yes, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, just making sure we were on the same page. That may be one of the first ones I would eliminate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have Brazil, Russia, India, and China working together to develop a new reserve currency.
Yes, I haven't been paying much attention to the story, but they call those countries the BRIC countries, BRIC. And what they're trying to do, and along with South Africa, is most of the countries across the world now use the U.S. dollar as their reserve currency. So everybody buys treasury bonds, and that's what they keep around for their reserve currency. These countries are starting to work together, and what they're really doing is forming a new world order. And it's because there are emerging economic powerhouses, right? So China's growing, India continues to grow, Brazil's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So all these countries are getting together saying, hey, we're not a big fan of the U.S. dollar any longer, and we're going to put together our own reserve currency. So I think we really got to keep an eye on this, because it seems like the U.S. dollar may be taking kind of a back seat, and it's going to be interesting to see how this goes over the next couple of years if countries start opting out of using the U.S. dollar as their reserve currency.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way finance works like that. It's not that you don't use euros in Europe. Of course you do. It's how their currency is valued is based on the dollar.
Right.
So when you say a euro is worth $1.10, well, because dollar is the benchmark. Mm-hmm. And it's not just our exchange rate, but it's since everybody's based off the dollar. When they start pulling us away from that, what they're trying to do is pull our economic legs out from under us.
Yeah, they definitely are. Yep.
And these are Brazil is a big energy producer. China and India are big energy users.
Big technology countries. That's where all the chips are coming from in these computers nowadays. And yeah, I'll have to definitely keep an eye on this one to see where this goes. It's happening very quick, and I should have been paying more attention to it over the last few years.
Yeah, well, that's when you start talking about the Chinese. Talking about they have a larger navy. Does that mean their navy's superior? No, it doesn't mean that. But their space program's working. Their nuclear program is working. They're continuing to produce nukes to go from second strike capability to first strike capability. They've been kiting our technology for years. Things that are developed here or developed in the West, they're developed in Germany, whatever. And once it gets shipped to China to mass produce, they have it. I mean, there is no private industry in China.
No.
Everybody works for the CCP.
Mm-hmm. Everybody, even from the lady or the guy sweeping leaves off the street, they're all employed by the CCP.
Yeah, exactly. And even the head guy at TikTok, who was getting grilled in front of Congress, works for the CCP.
Yeah, and he has to be very careful what he says, or when he goes back home, he'll never be seen again. There's definitely been instances of people like himself saying the wrong thing on TV, and then they go on a permanent vacation back home.
Yep. Yeah, life is very cheap in a communist country. I mean, you're either useful to the party or you're not. This is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over at thegeorgiavirtue.com. And with that, Ken, this week you have the mule.
Yes, I do. It's actually Dr. Terry Sanderson. If you don't know who that is, This is the guy that's suing Gwyneth Paltrow for originally $3.1 million. It was dismissed. Then he sued her for $300,000. Supposedly, Gwyneth crashed into Dr. Terry Sanderson out on the slopes in Utah and caused him to break 4 ribs and have a concussion. He lost his lawsuit, and Gwyneth actually won $1 from Dr. Terry Sanderson. So this is one of the silly lawsuits. This is so silly to me that Gwyneth is worth $30 million. I'm surprised she didn't pay this guy what he wanted. But took him to court, stood up for her rights, and actually won $1 from him. Dave, I don't know about you, but every time my friends come back from skiing out west, they've all got broken ribs and concussions. So I'm not sure if this is any different than what typical skiers have.
Yeah, I don't ski. I've done it.
That's
once.
why I don't ski. Yeah, that's why I don't ski.
Yeah, I went out to visit a buddy, and he lived out in Colorado. I'm at the airport getting on the plane, and I call him and say, "Hey, look, man, the flight's on time. I'll see you in 3 hours, whatever it was." He goes, "Cool, I guess Lyft tickets." I said, "Who's Lyft?" He took me to the top of the mountain and gave me instructions: put your toe in first and follow me. That was the only instruction I had in skiing. And he didn't take me to the bunny slope. He took me to the top of Breckenridge.
Nice. Breckenridge is really high. Yeah, that's why I don't ski. Too many of my friends come back with ACL tears, broken bones. So skiing is a dangerous activity for us older guys.
Yeah, I mean, look, the people who enjoy it, but it took Sonny Bono from us. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think look, if you or I had crashed into this guy, nothing more would have been said besides, "I'm really sorry. Are you okay?" And that would have been it, because we're not worth $300 million or $30 million, whatever she's worth. It wouldn't be worth suing me. I mean, you might sue the lodge or whatever if something was unsafe and they should have marked something, but other than that, that's just the consequence of it.
This guy was looking for a minute of fame, and I don't think he got what he wanted.
Yeah, well, I mean, he got the attention.
For a brief moment.
What did we get this legislative session?
Yeah, so we kind of broke this up into 2 different areas. So what passed this legislative session, and then what didn't pass this legislative session that people would recognize. So main thing, again, Georgia has to pass a balanced budget every year. So the budget did pass on day 40, $32.4 billion this year, Dave. I look back, it was $26.2 billion when I actually went into office in 2019. So it's a nice little 23% increase over the last 4 years in our state budget. But some of the highlights there, most families will get a $500 rebate back. There's another $1 billion in state income tax refunds that's coming back to taxpayers. State law enforcement will get $4,000 to $6,000 raises. And once again, teachers get a raise. So teachers get a $2,000 raise, even though most don't support the governor's school choice bill. I always think that's ironic that we continue pouring money in when most don't support some key initiatives from the government. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, there's a great line in Ghostbusters where Dan Aykroyd says, "You've never been in the private sector. They expect results."
Goodness.
I mean, you would think any good teacher would love school choice.
You would, and I've kind of soured on. I'm a little frustrated because school choice didn't pass this week. We can talk about that later, but yeah, we continue to give money into education, and nothing is taking money out of education. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no way truly to measure is our kids in Georgia getting better educated.
Yeah, there is. Talk to one of them.
Well, yeah, definitely.
All right, so we have SB 63.
Yeah, so I cut on a broadcast the other day, and this is one of the bills. You'll see a couple every year that have a 2 or 3 hour debate on the House floor. And this was one of the bills. It was by Senator Robinson in the Senate. It passed the Senate, picked up by Houston Gaines, Representative Gaines in the House. This is another tough on crime bill that the Republicans in the General Assembly have supported. So what the main part of this bill is it expands a list of crimes that require cash bail now. Background is you see a lot of DAs and a lot of judges throughout throughout Georgia that are starting to just let people out. When they get charged with a crime, they let that person immediately out. So it's unsecured judicial release, right? They don't spend a minute in jail. They don't have to bond out. So what they ended up doing is adding, I think it was 15 to 17 new crimes that require a cash bail, which means you have to go in front of the judge, and the judge has to give you a cash bail for you actually to bond out. So that was the background on this bill. It was a very controversial debate. But again, it goes towards this tough on crime that the Republicans in the General Assembly are going after.
Yeah, I mean, some of those nonviolent victimless crimes they included was possession of pot, which is unbelievable because most police officers I know don't arrest for simple possession of marijuana. And
No,
I'll tell
they
you
don't.
why.
Not anymore.
It's not worth the effort. Now, look, if you're on the side of the road and you're just an a-hole, you give someone an excuse. Now, I hate to say that that's how things work, but things go a lot easier if they take your dime bag or whatever and just stomp it out on the pavement and tell you to get on home. Mm-hmm. A failure to appear, there's
unlawful assembly was one that there were a lot of questions on, and what does it mean to be unlawfully assembled? So there were a lot of Democrat questions on that. I think that was cracking down on protesters that are unlawfully assembled. But what they're trying to do now is, if you are unlawfully assembled, you have to go, you have to bond out. You can't just be immediately released on unsecured judicial release. So yeah, very tough on crime bill that got through.
Which means a night in jail.
It does. It means a night in jail or 2 nights in jail, depending upon when you.
Oh yeah,
got picked up.
You get popped Friday night for simple possession. The judge is not going to be in until Monday.
Yeah, and that was the point of a lot of questions on the Democrat side of the House, is jails are overcrowded already. So we're now almost dictating that everybody, if you get picked up for marijuana, you have to go to jail now. And a lot of the jails are so crowded in Cobb County that they're sending people down to other counties, which is just going to increase the cost to the local jail system of having to transport people all over the place while they're waiting to get their cash bail in front of a judge.
And our brand new jail out in Paulding County, we take I won't say a lot, but when I see the mugshots come across, I'll see housed for Cobb, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Cobb County shipping people all over. So yeah,
and we can use the money.
I understand. Yeah, I understand what the Republicans are doing with this. Do I think we need to have somebody go in front of a judge for marijuana possession now? I'm not sure about that.
Sex trafficking is in there. I have yet to hear of someone accused of sex trafficking, actual trafficking, getting out on a handshake bond.
Right, I agree with you.
That's just not done. What gets grouped in with sex trafficking is sex work.
Right.
So again, you're taking somebody who's already kind of marginalized in society as a professional in the crotch arts, and putting her or him in jail for a weekend or whatever, have to bond out when it's a simple process crime.
No, I agree.
But the Republicans especially conflate the two ideas of sex slavery and sex work. Right. And what I say to that is, if someone puts you out in the field and makes you work and doesn't pay you, that's slavery. If you take a job running a combine, that's work. Mm-hmm. So we have.
Let me read down through these real quick. And Dave, jump in if you got any thoughts on these. But a transgender treatment bill, we've talked about that quite a bit. That passed this session. The prosecutor oversight bill, which was very interesting. That was the one that was really what Democrats were saying was targeting Fani Willis up in Atlanta for her grand jury going after President Trump. I think they're probably correct on that. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, it's the Dick Donovan bill.
Oh, it's a Dick Donovan bill. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah,
over in your neck of the woods.
And Dick's and Joseph's Gold who dropped it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, we had conversations when the when the tapes came out, they came out 2 weeks before COVID really hit. So there was no time. There was a movement to start moving to get Dick out of office before he hit his 20 years, whatever it is, he gets his retirement from the state.
But then COVID hits and all that got derailed.
COVID hits and nobody's happier about it than Dick Donovan.
Gotcha. Yeah,
but that's really could it be used against Fannie? Theoretically, I guess. But this really is the Dick Donovan bill, where we had somebody who was costing the county a lot of money with lawsuits, with the sexual harassment stuff, probably committed a crime and he ended up pleading guilty and gave up his law license. But the process took so long, thanks to COVID, that he hit his retirement. The office was completely dysfunctional until we got Donovan out and got Rollins in, just to really clean that office up. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's really the biggest genesis of it. It's not Fannie Willis. Fannie's not that damn important.
All right, so another one, Hope Scholarship is now 100% funded if you maintain a B average. In the past, it was 80% funded. The only way you could get tuition 100% funded was making $1,200 on your SAT. So now every kid that maintains a B average will get 100% tuition in Georgia. That was a change this session. Nonprofits can no longer fund election boards. This is the Facebook ban. If you remember, Facebook had a nonprofit was then funneling money into county election offices in Atlanta. That's going to be interesting. They can't do that anymore.
There's always a way.
There is always a way. I agree with you. And then the heavy truck bill got passed. That was a lot of controversy. It got passed, and I think this was actually after midnight on day 40. So session is supposed to end at midnight, but it stayed over for a few more minutes. This is where trucks can ride down the road with more weight that they're carrying, and then the TikTok ban for government employees. So those were some of the major legislative items that got passed this session.
Yeah, unlike the TikTok stuff that's at the federal level, ours is specific to government-owned devices.
Yep, which we're totally in agreement with.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't need Facebook
TikTok
or anything else on there. That's your work computer. Do work. You're at work.
Only if they needed to do their job. Exactly.
All right. So what we did not get vouchers.
Yeah, so Governor Kemp came out really strong on this voucher bill over the last couple of days before session ended. He went on Eric Erickson's show to throw his support. A couple closed-door meetings with Republicans supporting this. Still couldn't get it through on day 40. There were actually 16 Republicans that voted no on the school choice voucher bill. Yeah, I think it was a big shock to everybody. Usually the governor gets what he wants and twists some arms up there in a good way, but could not get the voucher bill through.
It's not dead. Because it's the same session. It can be brought right back up.
It can. I mean, it can come up next year, but the same 16 or same 16 that voted no are still going to be there next year.
Well, they will, but
it's going to be tough to
in an election year. If they get home, and again, we talked about getting involved with your reps. They get home and they hear from people, from parents. It's just the whole thing is asinine. Now, do the public schools lose funding? Not per se, but do they lose money in their nutrition programs and all the other federal programs that pay per child? Probably. Do better. Don't suck at what you do, and you'll make more money.
Yeah, but I had a superintendent years ago tell me that it wasn't the money that he was worried about in these type programs. And he was very honest with me. He said, the reason I don't like private schools is because the private schools are taking my best students. So you're taking the best students away from the public schools and putting them into private schools. And that was his biggest knock on any type of voucher bill or any type of private school.
Then it is the money, because when you lose the best students, you start losing federal dollars.
That is true, but you lose leaders in that local school system that then pull the other students up. So,
but they've been playing this. They've been playing the same game on the other side, though.
Oh,
so
100%.
Because with magnet schools, and most people know what a magnet school is, but people who haven't been near a magnet program don't know it's a school within a school.
It is. Yes.
The kids that get taken to a magnet school in Southwest Atlanta to improve the overall scores for that school are not interacting with the kids from Southwest Atlanta. They're brought in for whatever, robotics program or something special. They have their own school bus. They have their own lunchtime. They don't generally interact with the rest of the student body. They're just a group of really smart kids. They're going to test really well and bring the overall score up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like you said, this is not over, but it's at least over until next January of 24. So the only way I think this gets revived is, like you said, these representatives go home and they hear enough public outcry from their constituents to let them know that they don't support their view on voting no on the school choice bill.
All right, so sports betting never seems to go away, and it never seems to get passed.
No, I don't even think there was a vote on it this year.
I don't think it made it out of committee.
It didn't. Sports betting went down in flames. Elimination of runoff elections, which I was really hoping we would get to. This is more providing another way where we don't have these long, drawn-out runoffs, but that didn't go anywhere this year.
The mental health bill.
Yeah, so this was really part of Speaker Ralston's legacy. Speaker Ralston's last year, they passed a big, really omnibus mental health care bill. And then this year, Representative or Chairman Todd Jones from up in the Atlanta area was adding on to the bill that was passed last year. And this got stuck in the Senate and never came up for a vote. So I know Representative Jones was very disappointed in this. It just continued to add on to some of the mental health stipulations that came down last year.
Anti-Semitism bill.
Yeah, look, I don't like hate crime bills. I don't think I voted no on the original hate crime bill in Georgia. I don't think you can. It's hard to infer intent. But this was a bill that passed the House and again never got a vote in the Senate. This was a bill basically that said if you targeted Jewish people, then there would be enhanced penalties to your sentence. So it was really adding on to the hate crime legislation that was passed a couple of years ago in Georgia.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I think hate crime legislation is disingenuous at best.
I do too. Yep, that's my thoughts exactly.
Moronic at worst. Creating separate classes of victims. The tenant protection bill would have capped deposits and ensured landlords kept rental homes fit to live in.
Yeah, so a bill by Republicans in the House, this bill would have ensured that a tenant was only charged, part of that was saying that your rental deposit can only be 2 months worth of rent. And then it was also saying that the landlord had to keep that rental home in certain conditions, or you could actually get out of your agreement better or quicker. So that bill didn't pass, but it was an interesting bill. Look, I think government needs to manage the government and private citizens need to manage private affairs, but this was a bill really aimed at getting down into the weeds on tenant-landlord agreements.
Right. That's a civil function. They have government has no place in it. If you agree to rent a dump, you rented a dump. And look,
I agree. I know that doesn't sound right, but that's the way exactly how I feel about it. Also, is this a contract between an individual and a business, or two individuals?
And what I was going to say is, no matter how bad a home looks to you or to me, where we are in life, that home is a blessing to somebody. Somebody who can't afford $2,000 a month can afford $700 a month. Maybe the blinds are paper blinds and it's not in the best condition, but it's a roof over your head, and it's what you can afford while you're building up. We have this idea, especially coming from the left, that everybody should make $1 million a year. There should be no minimum wage jobs, and that everybody should live in a mansion. Well, that's not how it works.
No, not at all.
And when everybody has the same level of housing, most people's housing isn't brought up. Everybody's standard of living is brought down. Right. And we see this in China. We've seen it with the Soviet Union. We see how the people live, and that's what happens when governments start controlling rent. All right, Kenny, you got a closing thought? Yeah,
I mean, I know the session just wrapped up, but two things for me. I think Colton Moore over in the Senate did a great job in his first year as senator. He voted no on a lot of bills he should have voted no on, so he didn't go along with the Republicans just to go along. He really exercised a very small government view. And over in the House, Charlize Byrd did a great job. So I think she's a retread, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but she came back in last year. She represents part of Cherokee County, and she voted no on the budget and was the lone no vote on a lot of other legislation. So we need more Coltons, and we need more Charlize's.
What happens is the longer they stay up there, they start just laying on the yes button.
Yeah, they do lay on the yes button. Yeah, but I really appreciate the freshman representative and senator for doing such a good job this year.
Well, good. We have 2 shining stars. State Department is urging Americans to get the hell out of Russia. To avoid travel to the Russian Federation, and if they're there, to get out as soon as possible. This comes after the Russians arrested a journalist who was working for the Wall Street Journal and accused him of espionage. So we found this out when we paid off Russia for Brittany Griner. If we were going to release an arms dealer, you thought we could have gotten some arms out of the deal. But we see what happens when you bribe terrorists. So, on that happy news, on behalf of Eric Cumby, our editor, who has got to do some work for us this week, Ken Poland, my partner to the endeavor, I'm Dave Roberts. We'll talk to you next week.
Catch me howling at the moon.